Okay, so I'll get started. Okay, so welcome everyone to this demo, to whomsoever it may concern. My name is Sharik Ahmed Khan, and this demo video is about Python data analytics. I am a trainer from past 6 years, and I deliver training in multiple technologies, let's say Python, machine learning, IoT devices, embedded systems, Azure cloud, yeah, and things like that. Also shell scripting and Docker basics. Um, Over the course of 6 years, I've trained everybody from K-12 zone to experienced professionals in industries, almost like 25 years or 20 years or 15 years. So I've I've dealt with all kind of audience in my career, even including faculties. For the purpose of this video or this demonstration, I've divided this demo into three parts. First of which I will talk about foundation of or for of data analytics. That means I will be talking about both of this, followed by basics of Python, and then some data analytics code walkthrough. I will not be coding it live, but I'll just give a walkthrough of why I did what I did. Okay, it may not be a perfect sequence because it's already pre-written, and sometimes we write 10 line of code and then we realize it can be done in 3 line of code. So the code that I'm going to walk through going to be like a 3 line of code. So kind of comparison. In terms of foundation of data analytics, uh, there are some bricks that are involved in this foundation of data analytics or any data related operations. So in this foundation basics, I will talk about those bricks next few slides. You know that there are data from different sources, and here the data can be of any form. It can be structured, unstructured, and semi-structured form. I will talk about that in later slides. What is the difference? So you know that each data type has its own way of being stored. You have files being stored in different data type or data structure or storage methods. You have messages, you use queues for that. Then you have relational database for storing rows and column data, a fixed row and column data, which has its own schema. And then you have NoSQL data that is, there are different types. There is graph type, there is document type, and so on. So these data type comes this data from different sources. Instead of putting them precisely into relational database to a relational data into relational database, non-relational data into non-relational database, and so on. It's convenient to get the data from different sources and put them into one place, which we call as data lake. So different data from different places come to a data lake. Then we perform ETL process, and the data is sent to data warehouse. Data warehouse is a relational database of a big, huge amount of data. And then there is some aggregation. There is some, selecting a specific column and so on for specific department of the company. And this specific data is stored in data mart. Um, and this data mart is kind of a specific relational database for a specific department of a company. So analytics happens and can happen at any stage of this data life cycle. It can happen in the beginning itself, which is at data lake. It can happen at data warehouse, or it can happen at data mart. The only difference is that you need to do a lot of work versus less of work. But also it can vary for your organization. Maybe you can have analytics running um, for how much data we get versus how much data is useful, like these things. If there is any flaw from the data source and things like that. So it depends on the use case and what your company needs actually. And you can summarize that into 4 different operations. You can see it's data ingestion, one process. Second is analytical data store. I'll put this over here and a little bit smaller. Okay. And analytical data model, and finally data visualization. And data analytics is accompanied with data visualization. Now, there are some terms that are very useful in terms of this whole data analytics basics. So some of these terms are structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data. Let me give you a brief overview. Structured data, you know, rows and columns. Unstructured images and videos. So you use NoSQL sometimes. Semi-structured data is are also rows and columns, but they don't necessarily have same columns. So maybe first data that I get is um, age group, phone number, but the second data I get is IoT data. So the column will vary basically. So that's basically we call it as semi-structured data. Now comes the way a database is used. If a database is used as transactional database, we call it as OLTP. So these are just the terms that you should be aware of. If I use a database in transaction purpose, it is called as OLTP database. And there is different optimization techniques for that. If I use the same database for analytical purpose, it is called as OLAP, online analytical processing. Then comes your data warehouse and data lake and data mart. So for the first thing is data lake. You get a raw data from different sources and you put them into one place. Structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data at one place is data lake. Okay. The next stage is a relational database of the all of different sources. So you have data warehouse, and then from all the relational database, from all the data that you have stored in data warehouse, if you take a part or type of data set from that data warehouse and send it to maybe sales department, that's basically put into data mart. Okay. Now in this whole process, you can follow 2 different approach. One is extract, transform, and load, and the other one is extract, load, and transform. And when you go into the details of data engineering pipeline, you will get to know about these 2 things. It's just the 2 different techniques to optimize technique of data processing. Okay. And for a quick difference between them, you can have a read about these 2 differences. It's a snippet from Google search. So it's good to know a little bit more about data lake versus data warehouse and data warehouse versus data mart. So you're not confused. Although I tried my best to explain you in the previous slides. Try to follow resources such as Snowflake, Qlik, because these are the companies behind the modern and improved data related platforms. So they would give you more precise rather than someone understanding these blocks and trying to give his view. It may or may not be correct, and nobody would take, authority of it. But since these are the companies that are behind these modern platforms, so I would recommend to use only genuine resources like these. In when talk about finally about data analytics, what it is used for and how it can be used, there is a huge dependency on this data analytics and henceforth data visualization, um, because it helps you give genuine insights rather than believing on the word of mouth or just gossips in the company or about a certain thing or the brand, for example. It gives you genuine insights. So maybe a group of people would like buying branded shoes, for example, but if you can work out with non-branded shoes, and you know that the way you use shoes is not rough and tough. So it doesn't matter what a group of people says. What it matters is, does it meet your requirement? You need shoes, you need good quality, you need a good design, whatever it is. So if it satisfies your condition, brand or no brand. So basically these are the way you can actually get down to real crust. Okay. So data helps you get to the crust. For example, let's say you want to generate a employee growth report in an IT company. So you are a manager or you are a appliance manager, and you really want to know which person or which employee under you, maybe 100, 150, 200, 350 employees, are actually contributing to the growth. For example, what does it mean if he's interacting more with the client side, if he's taking more calls with the client, if he's satisfying the client, if the team that is engaged with him in daily tasks is happy based on the reviews? Is he solving and taking up higher priority incidents, or let's some issues with the server or some code bug and debug and things like that? If he's taking high priority, if he's working under pressure. So these are some of the metrics that can help you to decide if the person is actually responsible for the growth of the company, first of all the department and hence for the company. So there are some points that I've listed based on my knowledge. So how many incidents a particular employee solves, higher priority incidents, because urgent work is always extra charged by businesses. Of course, if you are a service provider, and let's say translation service provider, and you generally give a translated copy in 3 days, maybe you have done that, optimize your work in such a way. But there's a client who comes and says, I want the translation in 3 hours. So everything will work. For example, instead of taking a bus to a certain place or the person who does the translation, you would take a cab, right? So bus ticket would cost you 30 and the cab would cost you maybe 100 and 150. So everything goes higher. The charges goes higher. Same goes for the businesses. If if there is an urgent incident and it has to be prioritized, so all the resources are deployed to that particular, it's focused basically. Secondly, how he interact with the customer and governance team, um, how quickly he resolves an issue, ticket, or incident, and these metrics and more of these like can be used month over month to actually see if he is growing in linearly or exponentially. What is the percentage? The How many incidents does he solve, and what is the percentage of growth he gives to the company? You could be generating a report to help government to prepare report for investors. For example, you have all the countries which are inviting people to invest in their country. For example, you have your invest in Lithuania, invest in India, invest in Czech Republic, invest in Malaysia, and the likes of these pages are there. You can check out what they talk about is not what is their uh, what can they do. Yes, they do talk about that, but they take the metrics. We have 1,000 plus engineer which are ready to be deployed and so on. We have so much amount of resources and things like that. So they talk about metrics. Okay. And then you might have seen some metrics such as variable chart that gives what is the progress of a country over the years and things like that. So that's the importance of data analytics, and here on also data visualization. More thing you can do with data analytics in IT, for example, is generate system runtime or history report like analyst, IT analyst, how well the system has been performing over the past years. Okay. And some of the role where it can be used is market research analyst, where you help other clients to set up their company, get to know their competitor, what is the price, how to work on the good things, and so on, to get launched in India or any other country. For example, Mars chocolates, um, you know, all the international brand Nestle. Um, these are international brands, yeah. So who help these brands to actually get to know the place where they're going to establish. For example, IKEA has recently started their business in India, Bangalore, and other cities. So, how do they know what Indian people want? These are the research analysts that help them to get to know the audience. What can be expected from you? Always generate meaningful and correct relationships, find interesting insights, be nice and kind when the customer is asking you multiple changes, understand the business and impact before working with data. I've had friends, I've had colleagues who switched the job because they didn't like what the data they were working in. For example, he was working in one of the company, big company, and he switched the company because he didn't like working with biological data, you can say, which is mitochondria, cell, and so on. So he didn't like it, he switched. So it's good to know about what the company works and what you will be working on. I'll take this up. Clean data as much as possible and keep it clean always. Keep business process knowledge and KPI. You should know how your role and how your report is impacting the business. The more you know about your role, the better you can grow in your career. Okay. You could be good engineer, but if you understand what can generate a return of investment, you will be smart. If they're investing in you, let's say 1 lakh or 2 lakh per month, if you generate 4, 5, 10, 20 lakhs for them, you can be worthy. You are smart enough. But if you're just doing enough to keep your job stable, you're just an engineer. You're not smart engineer. Okay. Always follow dry in principle, never repeat stuff, keep notes and copy paste, always document your learning at every stage, and always back your argument suggestion with evidence. Always keep the evidence with you in the backup as a folder, wherever you want, and things like that. Now, enough of it. Let's get started with Python basics. Why? Because it's quick, it's the most preferred language for data analytics. Instead of learning a specific language like R, or other tools, for example, Wolfram and things like that. They are niche technology. They are the niche tools. You can be bounded with their environment only. You cannot use it for any other purpose. For example, if you learn R, can you automate system? No. Can you do DevOps? No. So that's the reason why people prefer general purpose languages. So Python is a general purpose language. You learn Python for data analytics. You can do Python with IoT, data scientist, machine learning, AI, computer vision, natural language processing. You can do system automation, Python with DevOps. Um, if you know Python, you can learn shell scripting very quickly. So, and the community backed by community that is backing up Python is huge. So you don't have to worry about if the language is no longer be supported, such as of the few languages that ended their support ended. Let's learn about Python basics. So in this part of the section of this, this video, I will be teaching about some basics just to demonstrate how I teach Python. So in order to explain you the way I explain things is, let's assume that we are learning mathematics, and I'm sure you know some basic mathematics, algebra, plus minus, multiplication, division, and things like that. So if I ask you, uh, assign a value 4 to a variable a, so you would naturally do this way. Second thing, assign 5 to a value of variable b. And you know how you do in mathematics, you do another variable c equals to a plus b. Okay? And that's the same way you do in Python, because Python is very much close to English language. How you write and speak English, you just have to know a little bit of trick and a little bit of way how to find that output, how to find that function, and you will be very well with Python programming. So, and I'm just gonna C and shift and enter. Well, by the way, this is a Jupyter. This is a notebook which is hosted on Google Colab. If you run things on Google Colab, it's backed by GPU or TPU specifically, which is Tensor Processing Unit. There is one thing called as CPU, there is one thing called as GPU, and there's another thing called as tensors. So higher processing. So you can see, as you would expect, the addition of 4 plus 5 is should be 9, and that's what you can see over here. How you would have done in mathematics, you would have written c equals to 9 and made the box. Can we do multiplication subtraction? Yes, we can. C equals to, or d equals to a minus b, b equals to a multiply b, e. F equals to a division b, or you can also do double division b. So there is a difference between single division, which is decimal value specific, like it gives you exact value, versus double division, it gives you round of values. So I'll just use one just to make things clear. F. Okay. Can I do this whole operation or 4 line of code into one single line? Yes, I can do. So I can use, just like I'm using A, B, C, D, E, F, I can use a variable name result, and I can perform all these operations in one line. How? Let's see. A plus B, comma, A minus B, A multiply B, and A divided by B. Next line, result, and there you go. Now it's some structure that it is basically, but I will talk about that. It's called as tuple, but we don't have to worry about it. It's just that you can do this whole 4 line of code into one just single line. Okay. Now you have seen that how I have been um, getting the output is by typing the variable itself, the output variable, where I'm storing the values, and this I'm printing it. I'm just typing C, for example, and shift and enter to run that cell. But a Pythonic way is, what I'm doing basically is printing the result. So if I say printing the result, and I've also promised that Python is very much close to English, so there has to be some keyword or a function that is called as print. There you go. If you type print followed by parentheses, it's a way of basically, um, you know, uh, you can consider that this is like a way to write print statement in Python. It's a syntax, call it. So print and the variable that we want to print result. Okay. Now what's the difference? You can do some formatting in this. For example, you can delimit instead of comma with space. You can delimit with semicolon and so on. It's up to you. But in direct this way, you cannot. Okay. I will talk about those things later on. Okay. So this is the Pythonic way of getting the result or printing the result. Now, having said that, there are some rules that we need to take care of. Let's say whenever you're using a variable name, never start it with 2, because if you do that, it's not right, it's not accepted. Never start with, okay, do not write my first variable like so. Okay, it's not a genuine, it's not accepted way. Rather, just you can use, you know, underscore for that, and then you can assign anything for this. Okay. There are some conventions, camel case and other methods. So you can use this way. So my first, and then you can assign value. Okay. There are other ways. Let's say if functions are written with, first letter as small, you can write your function or your variable first letter as big. For example, my, or first letter always big, my first. Okay. So all these variables are different. And yeah. Okay. So moving on further, we talked about how we do things in maths. That's the way we should do in Python. In maths, there are other data type, which is decimal values also. So can you do that in Python? Yes. One more thing also to note is, although you have used a variable here C or A and B, since Python is a dynamic language, you can redefine a variable and just type it 3.4. And let's use Pythonic way of printing a variable. Again, this is a decimal. In Python, we call it as floating point, floating number, or you can say float. The above one were integers, int. We write it somewhere. Okay. And like I have float, I have other data types. Like in mathematics, you have integer and decimals. In Python, you have other data type as well, which is integer, float, string, and boolean. There is also complex and things, but we don't use it unless it's a specific industry. You don't use complex a lot. So let's stick to all general four data types. Int, float, string, bool. We have used int, float. I'll show you how to, string. So a equals to, I'm going to use any value. So I'll write my name, Sharik. This is a string. Okay. And b equals to, I can give some space. I can perform string concatenation. This is called as string concatenation. Like you concatenate, you add two things. Okay, so that's a string concatenation. And for Boolean, let's me show you, it's just true means one in general, and b equals false. You use these data types in while loop or some looping mechanism. Okay. Now I've used, integer types. Let me just use some way to explain what are the different possibilities of these data types. For example, integer, this is an integer. This is a float. This is also float. This is also float. This is also float. But the moment I put double under, let's say double quotes between anything, it becomes string. So what makes it string? It's the double quotes. So this is string, this is string. There's something called as literal string. That means when you have a path to a file, things like that, you use something called as literal string. Like you want the compiler or the runtime environment, your environment to consider that literally that path. Don't consider it as, transform into something or anything. So there's something called as literal path, which is h equals, you use single quotes. If you're just writing, sharik or something, it will be considered as string. But the moment you use a path to a file, for example, users, desktop, something like this to, and this is a data.csv, like data file. So it will convert this into, it will not consider this because backward slash has some meaning in command prompt or runtime. So you tell the compiler or interpreter specifically that to consider it as raw, it's a raw string. Do not assume anything else, just the raw. Okay. So although it might not show some result or unique result here, but in practical, when you use, let's say, open a file and you put the path, it's preferred to use R and then single string. We call it as literal string. Now there is something called as multi-line string. Whenever you want to, write a paragraph, like how things are in ChatGPT, where you give prompts in multiple lines. You have paragraphs, you give prompts, you give, one shot, few shot or zero shot learning. So you give prompts, you give paragraph for it to understand. So you can use multi-line string in triple quotes. And then you can write, hi, my name is Sharek, I'm a trainer. Okay, so the Boolean you know already. Now, how do I prove that these are what I'm telling you? So, how do I know that this data A, let's say 1, the data 1, is of the type integer? I want to know the type. So if I'm telling I want to know the type, there has to be some function that names as type. Okay, so let me just type type followed by parenthesis because it's the syntax. You know the drill now. Followed by of what you want to know the type. I want to know the type of A. When you run it, it gives you integer. I'm going to give you just one more example. Then I want to know the type of F, string. Where do you use it? You use type when you try to work with data in table format. Generally in data analytics, we call this as data frame, which is like row and column way through pandas. Okay. Use the type because you want to be aware if the function you're applying, if any operation you're applying is valid operation. You cannot apply plus at the plus or addition to object type. Okay, that's where you use type. And another interesting thing that is going to be helpful for you is to know what does a function do. I like to know what does type do, what is print more capable of. So if I like to know more about it, I need some help. And wait a minute, did I just say help? That means there has to be some function called as help of print. If I do this, it will give me some documentation, some inbuilt documentation. Print value separation n, and it also gives you how to use it. I'll talk about how to do that. Okay. And there is also something called as dir, and it gives you what more function can you apply on this? For example, in print, we don't have any function that we can apply on this. But the moment I use dir for int, which is a data type, you can see you can apply here. Like you can find out what is the imaginary number from it, what is a numerator, real number, bit count, conjugate, and so on. Same thing you can do on string. And the moment I type, let's say, run this, you will see one familiar word that I've already used, which is called as concatenation. Well, never mind. Concatenation is possible because of this function, built-in function. Okay. There are things you can do, like you can convert each word um, into capital. Where is that? Capitalize, case fold, center, count, ends with. You want to know, does this word ends with this or not? Okay, some data processing. If you're reading a file and you want to process the data. That's about some Python basics. There are more in the details in the Python basics, but now I'll switch to the third part of this demo video, which is a walkthrough to the code of some data set for data analytics that is used commonly for data analytics. I will not be going through each step. I'll give a brief about it and explain you what I did in the past, what I thought of while performing this. The dataset that I've used is about adult dataset, which is about trying to know how much does an adult earn of different ages, what is their background, and how much do they earn, how much do they work, how many hours, and if they are married or not, what is their age. Okay, so these are the things that we will be looking at. So let's see. All right, so the code that I'm going to walk through will be about a data which I've downloaded from UCI dataset repository. So this is about a group of adults that have reported their salaries, their age, and things like that. So it's like you're trying to get to know your friends. What do they do? How much do they earn? What's their age? And you get inspired. Oh, is it possible? Can we do this and not? Just that you get to know someone. So in this data set, we're trying to have some curiosity to find those insights. So for example, you are a fresh graduate from probably you are 12th standard, 10 plus 2 pass out, or you're fresh graduate and you would like to know what career to take up for in future. Or you're somewhere in the mid of your career and you want to know what is the best career path. So from this, you get the insight uh, which stream, which career provides a good salary, and you can have your own constraints. Maybe you don't care about working too many hours, but if you do care about uh, not working too many hours yet making enough income, you can get those metrics as well. So it's just that what would you like to do in your career, you can get to know, you can actually get some insights, like what kind of people or what industry people are earning and how much do they work, what is their degree, what is their age, at what point of time were they able to make so much money. Okay, so it gives you kind of it's a reliable data set from reliable repository, and Let's see what do we have, some insights. Okay. Okay, so almost there. All right, so we have found out the data set. Analysis of the adult data set. That's what I was talking about, what we have done. So generally, I'll explain you a few lines of code, what is the whole process and why I've done what I've done. Okay. Generally, what you do is you go to a repository, you download the data set, and then you put the path. Where have you put the data set? And you read from using Pandas library, which is a library from built on Python. So basically, what you do is you have the path to the data set. You use Panda read CSV because you have downloaded a CSV file, comma separated for values, and you read the data from that. Then you realize that maybe the column names are not correct, and it really impacts your analysis most of the time. Because, for example, if you have the column name as name, but it's not consistent, maybe someone wrote it in hurry, he wrote it like small case or one capital and other small case, and there is a white space before and after it, and there is some letters, dash or something like that, maybe put by mistake. So you really have to work upon this column names at first. So it's always good to have column names separately and the data sets separately, and then you merge them by df or data frame dot columns equals to the columns that I'm going to provide in a list. So either you provide the list there itself, or you use column name variable, which I've used over here. So here I'm using column names, age, and all those things. And later you can see here df dot columns. After I've read this, I've used column names. So these columns will be mapped to this data set. Moving on further, we have to check if there is any white space between the values, in the values, before the values, after the values, so that the data is consistent. Otherwise, if there is a white space, it may be considered as object type or a string type other than numeric type. And if you're going to add, perform some describe operation like what is the mean amount they're earning, or the average amount, or the highest amount, those values will not be counted, and it will affect the whole calculation. So you have to take care of that. So what you do is, um, there is a function, built-in function in read CSV. You can do it column wise. For example, you can select the age column and you can select the specific value, remove the white space from before and after, or you can use a function, or let's say a parameter, which is called as skip initial space as true. The moment you do that, it removes all trailing and any before and after white space, and your numbers are considered as numbers only. Sometimes in the data set you have NaN values. These NaN values could be anybody put any random values because he didn't know what this data is all about. He didn't care about it. It was not his part of job. Fine, but it's always good to go one step ahead. So he just thought, okay, instead of number of bore a car should have, or number of wheel a car should have, uh, for example, should be four, but he didn't know, he didn't care about it, he didn't thought much about it. He just said, I don't know. He wrote something thinking that the person who is sitting next to him, or when he sent it to his technical lead, he will take a look and he will check it and he will tell what it is all about. Yeah. Maybe he forgot. Okay. So those values are interpreted as NaN values. So what you do is, instead of those random values, you put them with some question mark. You say Na values equals to, replace them with question mark. Okay. And you get to know where exactly it is. So this is like a data pre-processing, very, very basic data pre-processing, and it consumes a lot of time sometimes. Sometimes you have to open that file into some kind of Excel sheet to know how the data is. You have to first maybe sometimes get first five values to get to see and feel the data. What is the data type is. Okay, and basic analysis, you can see here what I've done is trying to find out how many are earning less than 50K. Um, some basic analysis. How many people are of 39 age, less than 39? What is the occupation of the first person at ADM, clerical, and so on? What are the occupations that have been um, listed or used in this data set is all these. So I've used occupation column and I want the unique values. That means I just want I don't want ADM clerical to be repeated for each user. So it will be like many. I just want unique values of it. That means if it is repeating few times, several times, it should be counted as one. So it's one type of occupation, hence unique. There are other ways in Python you can do, but we are using built-in functions of pandas based on Python. Okay, so you can drop any values. There are two ways, general decision making. If you have enough of data set and it's not going to impact the output, you can consider dropping any values, those values which you find like 2, 3, 4 or NaN. And if you don't think, if you have not enough data, for example, a Titanic data set may affect, so you have to really consider if you are going to drop any values or not. Okay, so and this is the type of data you have. Okay, you can see the person is married, what's his position, is he in family, is in relationship. You can gain more insight about a person. Okay, what does he belong to, what class he belongs to, and then you can find out what is the age people earn more and things like that. I will show. Let's go quickly to the visualization part of it. I've done some basic visualization on this and we'll see what kind of insights can we generate as a chart. You can see some analysis have been done. For example, working class for income above 50K. And after that, we found out these are all the columns, or let's say names. And we wanted to find out exact people, how many of them earn above 50. So you can see federal government work 365 who earn more than 50,000, private more. That means private firms or people in private sector earn more than 50,000, then followed by self-employed, uh, local government, self-employed, etc. And then you can sort them by ascending order or descending order. So you can see. So basic analysis, and then you can generate this report, give some values, draw a dashboard. There are some dashboard softwares. So profession of work class above 50K. So grouping by work class, and then you have ordered by ascending or descending order. So coming to the section of visualization, it's not actually representing the data set that I've used here, but you can still see what are the different types of visualization I've used and how can it be, which type of it could be useful for your case. Okay, so for example, um, if we are going to talk about, there is a type of plot called as distance plot, point plot, and this is how you represent. You have bar graph, you have violin plot. It shows the distribution of values over the range. which one is the highest one, and the middle section would be the median. You have strip plot, swarm plot, frequency plot. Okay, so that's all for this demonstration. And in the data analytics pipeline or the roadmap, or when you learn that from me, there will be everything will be in details. What plot is used for when, and how can we improve our visualization and things like that. So I hope you like this. I hope it was not too detailed, but I wanted to make a genuine video demonstrating every part of it. That's it, from understanding or explaining technical concepts to some way how I teach in programming, and then code walkthrough. So thank you so much and have a good day. Bye bye.